I just want to give you guys another video recommendation. It's another Kugan Cassius iFL TV interview, and this time it's with Kell Brook himself ahead of his fight with Sean Porter on Saturday. Now, in this interview, we get more of an insight into Kell Brook's mindset going into this fight. And also, it kind of serves as an example, as you know, for the type of media retention that I think personally can get to a fighter who's mentally vulnerable. Because Kugan Cassius was asking questions of Kell Brook, of his psychology, and even asking questions of someone can get them thinking even more. Now, Kell Brook said some things in his interview that were very interesting. He said that he's been thinking about this fight and envisaging this fight for months. He said sometimes he stays awake at night, like thinking about the fight keeps him awake at night. That to me is alarming. That's alarm bells right there, and that shows you the kind of mentality that Kell Brook has. Now, a lot of fighters may dream about fights. A lot of fighters might get anxious and stuff like that. But trust me, when you deal with the best in the business, guys like Floyd Mayweather, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Manny Pacquiao, Andre Ward, the night before a fight, these guys sleep well. Trust me, because they have supreme confidence in their ability. They're perfectly comfortable on the big stage. They feel like they own the big stage. Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, yeah, they get nerves maybe when they're in the dressing room, a little bit of slight nervousness, but nothing too intense. But a guy like Kell Brook, months and months out from the fight, this guy is having sleepless nights. And when people are asking him questions, oh, Kell, how do you think the fight's going to go? What about this? What about that? Oh, God. And this is the mentality of the British press. This is one of the things I think from a psychological standpoint, which hinders a lot of British, not just boxers, but athletes in general, is this incessant, constant, almost anxious attention from the media over these big events. They just literally all over these fighters and putting doubts into their heads. Oh, he says this and he says that and all this kind of stuff. Whereas if you see in the States, the press with the fighters are, apart from the massive fights, the press are fairly casual with the fighters. They approach them in a casual manner. They don't have this underlying feeling of anxiousness when they talk to the fighters. And the vibe is just a lot more relaxed and whatnot. And this is better for the fighters. Whereas in the UK, the press are just constantly anxious and just off-key. It's just an off-key mentality that the British press have. And it spreads out to the British people. The British people also behave like this when they're talking to the fighters and on Twitter and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's conducive to... Well, it certainly don't help fighters who are of a nervous disposition. Let's just put it that way. So Kell Brook talked about that. He talked about, not been sleeping, or sometimes the fight keeps him awake thinking about it. He also talked about the jet lag. He didn't say that jet lag's been a problem, but just the fact that he mentioned it, to me, it makes it seem like it was a problem. He said, he went to Vegas first and foremost when he landed in the States to get some sparring in and do the last bit of his training. And Vegas, I believe, is the same time zone as LA or near LA or Carson, California, where he'll be fighting. I think it's in the same time zone. Correct me if I'm wrong. But either way, Vegas is about 7 hours behind, I believe, behind the UK. So 7 hours time difference. That's a massive difference. Massive difference. So he's only arrived 2 weeks before the fight. I believe it was 2 weeks, maybe just over. So in that time, he has to adjust his body clock. Some people find that easier to do than others. Recently, Joseph Parker, who is a heavyweight prospect, he's fought in America several times now, or fought abroad several times now. And he says he's still having problems adjusting his body clock, and he still doesn't feel comfortable. He still doesn't feel sharp in the ring after several times visiting the United States to fight, or other countries to fight, still having trouble adjusting his body clock. Also, Kell Brook talked about the climate. He said the climate was very hot in Las Vegas, and that took him by surprise. That's the impression I got from the interview. You can go watch it for yourselves and see what you think. But he said the climate was, hot. So he's got a totally different kind of climate. Yes, it's a bit cooler in Carson, California than it is in Vegas, but it's certainly a different climate than the UK, that's for sure. So he's got to deal with the jet lag. He's got to deal with a different climate. He's got to deal with the nerves on a big stage. He's got to deal with all this attention and this anxious attention from the British public and the British media. And on top of all that, he's got to deal with a partisan crowd, a crowd who are going to be against him, pro-Sean Porter crowd, possibly a partisan referee, possibly partisan judges. And on top of that, he's got to deal with a very competent, world-class, very, very strong fighter in Sean Porter. So Kell Brook is well and truly up against it in this fight. And there's a lot against him. And I've been a big critic of Frank Warren over the years. But one thing that Frank Warren likes to do, and I have to, be honest about this, is Frank Warren does do a pretty good job at getting his fighters world title fights in the UK. That's something over the years he's been pretty consistent being able to do. And Eddie Hearn basically says he doesn't do that as much because he doesn't want to make a financial loss bringing fighters over to the UK, to get a world title, to have their world title shot in the UK. Whereas Frank Warren says he sees it as an investment. He sees it as, okay, I'm going to lose money on this fight, but my fighter has got a much better chance of winning if it's at home. So, if he wins, then in the long term, this risk, this gamble, this loss of money is going to pay off if my fighter wins. So I want to give my fighter the best possible chance of winning. Have it in, his backyard, choose what the size of ring and, do whatever he can to give his fighter the best opportunity to win. And had Kell Brook had this fight in the UK, as I've said previously, I might be picking him to win the fight with the home advantage, and Sean Porter having to adjust his body clock and adjust to the colder temperature and all that kind of stuff. I might, Kell Brook fighting to the best of his ability because being in front of his home crowd and in his comfort zone. And that's another thing that Kell Brook actually mentioned in the interview, that he's out of his comfort zone now. But he has apparently brought a very big contingent of people from the Inglewood gym. And again, to me, that shows from a psychological standpoint, Kell Brook is looking for comfort. If he's bringing a big entourage with him, he wants to feel comfortable. That's what that's all about. If a guy's really totally confident in himself, he don't need a big entourage. Like Derek Chisora, when he went out there to fight Helenius in Finland, he didn't bring a big entourage. When he went out to fight Klitschko, he didn't bring a big entourage. Because Derek Chisora is a supremely confident character. You don't need no extra entourage to make him feel confident. Whereas a guy like Kell Brook, I think, maybe does. So I've questioned Kell Brook's mental fortitude going into this fight, and I think that could be the telling factor. Because physically, I think these two guys are pretty evenly matched, Kell Brook and Sean Porter. But I just think the circumstances are not good for Kell Brook from a mental standpoint, and I think that's going to be the key to the fight, and that's why I'm taking Sean Porter to win. But go and watch the interview for yourselves. Tell me what you think. Also, someone commented on my prediction video and they said that they think Kell Brook looks a bit tired. And again, that could be jet lag, that could be fatigue from the climate, the changing climate. That could also be overtraining. This is the biggest fight of his life. This is something which he admits he's been losing sleep over. So it could be overtraining, fatigue, lack of sleep. To me, he doesn't look like a guy who's full of energy and full of life. He does look tired to me. He does look drained to me. Being tight at the weight could be another factor. There's just so much against Kell Brook going into this fight. If he actually pulls it off, then Kell Brook deserves a massive amount of credit, because to beat Sean Porter, he's not going to be able to beat Sean Porter with a close decision on the cards. He's going to actually have to beat the shit out of Sean Porter over 12 rounds to get a decision, or he's going to have to stop him. It's going to have to be an emphatic victory for Kell Brook to get the win. If he actually manages to do that, he deserves a great deal of credit, and he will be a lot mentally tougher than I expected him to be if he actually pulls it off, because I just don't think he'll be able to hold it together. But let me know what you lot think. Drop your comments in the comment section below. There was also another interview with a British fighter called, what's the guy's name now? Ryan Barrett. And, you know, Ryan Barrett was saying that basically he thinks Sean Porter's going to run right through Kell Brook. He's going to steamroll him. So that's also on iFL TV's page. I thought it was an interesting interview because most of the British boxing scene, you know, crowd, community, always say they always toe the party line. Even if they believe privately that the British guy is going to get fucked up, they always come out and say, oh yeah, go on, I think Kell's going to win. Whereas this guy, Ryan Barrett, is refreshingly candid, refreshingly honest, and he says, well, I think Sean Porter's going to demolish Kell Brook. Now, I do think that he's a bit, you know, I think he perhaps is overselling Sean Porter a little bit. He calls him an absolute beast and all this kind of stuff, which I don't see an absolute beast in Sean Porter at all. I mean, keep it in context. Go and watch his other fights. Go and watch his fight with Alfonso Gomez. Go and watch his 2 fights with Julio Diaz. The guy's not an absolute beast. He's a good fighter. Don't get it confused. But an absolute beast, a knockout artist, he's not. And in fact, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think Kell Brook's probably got more power, more, heavier hands than Sean Porter has. But all round, I think Sean Porter's probably a bit more versatile. Again, I've been into all the attributes of both fighters in my prediction video, so go watch that if you didn't catch it. So yeah, video recommendation anyway, a couple there, but the main one being the interview with Kell Brook. Go have a look and see what you think. This is Hatman, I'm out.